Hello, and welcome to Stage, Screen, and In Between. I'm Helen. Today I have a very special guest, Evi Blaikie. She's a published author, and she is also a hidden child. And for those of you who don't know what that is, we're going to explore that today. And she also has a documentary in the making. Thank you for being my guest today, Evi.
Thank you. Hello.
So, Evi, you're a survivor of your family's survivors of the Holocaust, and you as well, am I correct?
Those that did survive, of course. Yes, I am.
So, now you had to hide in order to stay safe and not be captured. So, take me back to your childhood. What was a childhood like?
Well, it was very eventful and very scary. I was born just before the beginning of World War II. I was about a year old when the war started in Europe, which of course started before here. And of course, as Jews, we had to hide in order not to be deported. And of course, children did not survive the camps, just a handful did. So those Jewish children who did survive were those who were hidden. And if you want to know statistics, about between 10 and 11% of Jewish children born between 1933 and 1945 survived. That's all.
That's not very much. So, Evie, tell me, how many members of your family were there and are there now?
Oh my goodness, I never really counted, but my father died in Auschwitz, both my grandmothers, several uncles and aunts. My mother survived the camps, and two aunts did, and an uncle. And that's about it. And now we all have children, and I have grandchildren, and I feel that's my revenge.
Now, I imagine you were separated from your parents at one point, weren't you?
Yes. When I was 2 years old and the Germans overran France, my father went immediately into hiding because he was a member of the Communist Party, as were anyone really, most Jews who were fighting the Nazis. So he went underground and I never saw him again. And then my mother was deported and I was left alone.
Now, where was your mother deported to?
She was deported to a munitions factory. She became a slave laborer in Austria. And she was there and she was caught sabotaging. So she was very badly beaten up. She was put into solitary confinement. And eventually she was put on a transport to the concentration camp. But she managed to escape. And she escaped from Austria to Hungary. And it so happened that when I was left alone in Paris, an aunt took me to Hungary to be with my mother's sisters, and we were reunited. She had no idea I was there. But
So now let me ask you, today we have internet and texting. How was your family able to communicate with your mother to know where she was so that you could be reunited? Was it through letters?
not at all. They weren't able to communicate. When she escaped to Hungary. She managed to make her way to Budapest to her sisters, and I happened to be there. They had no idea where she was. She had no idea where I was.
So now what happened to all your belongings? You had an apartment, you had a house, you had furniture. What happened to all that, all those things?
That would be nice to know, but I have no idea. It was all taken from us. After the war, we were literally destitute. We had nothing but the clothes we were wearing. That's it.
So now you mentioned to me that really the problem started for the hidden children after the war, when the war ended. You know, it wasn't over for you.
No, it wasn't over. I'm not saying the problem started, but they continued because, people assume the war is over and everything is now wonderful. But the fact is, as I said, we were destitute. Many had lost parents. We were in different countries from where we were born. We had to then go back if we could. Sometimes we couldn't. My mother was very, very sick, so I ended up in orphanages. So first in France, then in England. And we felt abandoned. and we had no place to call our own. And it took many, many years for us to find a place in the world, so to speak.
So now, tell me what the title of your first book is. You have two books, am I correct? So tell the audience the title of your first book and what that is about and how that differs from your second book.
Okay. Well, the first book is called Magda's Daughter. My mother's name was Magda, and obviously I'm her daughter. And the reason I picked that title was that because we had so many names, we took different identities to hide our Jewishness. So I was always called Magda's Daughter. So that's the book. And it's a biography, autobiography, which starts right at the very beginning, but it goes right up to the present practically. And it's also the story of my family, a Jewish family who started in one of the little backwater towns in Hungary, and the members ended up in France and England and Cuba and Venezuela and the United States. We were all dispersed.
Now, before the war broke out, what business was your family in?
My father was a tailor, and he came from Romania. My mother came from Hungary. They had settled in France. And my mother made handmade gloves.
Now, we have your second book here, and it's called Remember Us.
Remember Us. And actually, here we are. I didn't write all of it. These are stories of other hidden children, not whole stories. These are really glimpses of what children remember. When you say Holocaust, what comes into your head as a child? And these are all stories, not necessarily horror stories, just certain things one remembers. And some are absurd, some are funny, some are tragic. And these are all people who survived the Holocaust as children in Hungary by hiding. And so that's what this book is. It's Remember Us.
Can you tell me what is either the most horrific thing you remember or the best thing that you can remember? Something funny.
Oh, dear. Well, actually, yes, it's both. It's funny and it's horrible. We were hiding in a farm, and I had another name from the name, my own name. And because we had false papers, my mother had to have a son, not a daughter. So I had to pretend to be her niece. So I couldn't call her mother.
That had to be hard because it's so easy to slip.
It's very hard, which is what I'm going to tell you. On the farm, a calf was born. And of course, we children were very eager to see the baby calf. And finally, they let us into the stable, and we saw the cow licking the little calf. And I turned to my mother, who wasn't supposed to be my mother, and I said, I was 6 years old, "Did you lick me like that when I was born?" You know, which is funny, but at the same time, I was giving it away.
Dangerous.
And my mother kind of looked at me, and I realized I had slipped. And she just offhand said, "No, I didn't, but maybe your mother did."
Oh, that was clever.
Yeah, and the peasants, of course, started laughing.
Yes.
Thought that was very funny, but it was also a very frightening moment.
Yes.
You know.
So let me ask you now, it's very exciting. You have a documentary in the making, and you're actually going to be leaving for Europe in about a week or so. So tell us about that.
Well, there's a film company called Greenleaf Productions, and they took this book and they wanted to make a movie. So they will feature 4 of us. I will be the narrator and 3 others in the book, but everybody will, everybody's name and face will be on it, all the hidden children from the book. And they're taking me back to Budapest, to Paris, and to London, where I ended up going.
To the actual locations where you were?
Yes, to the actual locations. I don't know how that's going to be, but we're going back to the farm where the calf was born.
So you haven't been there in all this time. You haven't been there. So do you know if the farm is still there?
Yes, I do, because my cousin who hid with me was there a few years ago. He has died since, but he went and he told me it was there and that they remembered me. They said, what happened to the little girl who wore panties? Because the peasants didn't wear panties.
Interesting.
Yeah, right. So, yes, I'm going back there, and my granddaughter's coming with me.
Now, how old is your granddaughter?
24. And, yeah, so...
So lucky that you survived, because she wouldn't be here. So we're gonna take a break right now, because there is a trailer for the documentary, and we're gonna take a peek. Hold on.
We were slowly starving. There was no food, there was no water, there was nothing.
His mother and his sister and his nieces was killed because they wouldn't get on a train on a Friday afternoon.
A man came to the basement. He said a block or two away, a man was shot. We knew it was my father.
You frequently hid in the attic or in some closet where the Germans wouldn't be able to find you.
Fear was all pervasive. Anytime we heard steps, we were wondering if somebody had turned us in.
We were taught not to trust. And we never really knew who we were. We were hidden in farms and caves and forests and cellars.
We had to be so good at being invisible.
I still remember seeing the streets on fire.
They attacked everybody who was wearing a star.
We were under the impression that what happened to other Jews in other countries could not happen to us.
I heard my father's voice. There is no God. There is no God. There is no God.
I saw the people being thrown into the streets.
It was the most harrowing journey that you can imagine.
Too many tragic memories.
But these are not horror stories. These are the events that affected us. People who were kind to us, non-Jews, who risked their lives and helped us.
They brought milk for my little sister who was half dead.
This was a German soldier.
German soldier.
But I can't let it affect my life to the point that all the good things are going to be overshadowed by what was.
We survived. Hitler didn't succeed.
That was something, That's really great. Now, what is the title going to be? Do you know, or is there a working title?
No, I think it's going to be the same as the book, Remember Us.
Oh, okay.
So I think that sounds good, don't you?
Good. Now, I imagine, is it a feature length or a short?
I understand it is going to be a feature length, yes.
Oh, okay. So now, what countries will you be going to?
We will be going to Hungary, we're going to France, and we're going to London.
So now, how long will you be there?
2 weeks. 2 weeks, going all over, going back to all the places where we hid, and also they will take location shots in Hungary where the Jews were deported, where they were hiding, where they were shot into the Danube by the Arrow Cross, who were the fascists in Hungary. And then we're going to France, where I was in the orphanage. And then in London, where I was at the orphanage, and also my old high school, where I was the only Jewish girl when I went there.
Now, did you have to wear the star?
Yes, I was just 6 years old, and that was the age at which we had to wear yellow stars. And yes, we all wore the yellow stars, yes. And when we went into hiding, of course, we took it off. And that, if they caught you, carried the death penalty immediately.
So now, are there people there that you know that you're going to be able to see, or is everybody gone?
No, everybody's gone. But my cousin, who I told you we hid together, his son and daughter live in London, and they're coming to see the film. They're coming there to join me. Yes.
So this is really very historical, isn't it?
I think so. Yes. Yes.
And you know, I've heard stories about some people actually denying that the Holocaust ever happened, and I think that it's so important that, you know, the people that are left are continuing on to say, oh, it did happen. It did happen. I'm witness to it, you know. So it's a wonderful, wonderful legacy that you're leaving your granddaughter. Do you just have the one granddaughter?
No, I have 5 grandchildren.
Wow.
Yes,
Terrific.
Thank you. No, she's the oldest. They range in age from 13 to 24. Yeah. Yep,
so now, what is next after that? Do they have any time frame as to when this will be edited, distributed?
I think the plan is for it to be finished by the end of next spring, if you know. But that's I'm not privy to the filmmaker's schedule, right?
So I'm wondering if they have a distributor for it. Is this something that you think they intend to show in the theaters, or it is going to be in the theaters? Oh, that'll be wonderful. So you'll have a big opening.
I hope so. Hollywood, here we go.
Here you go, right? You know, so that's turning a negative circumstance into a positive for sure, isn't it? So now, I know that this is something that you carry your whole life. I mean, you were a little girl when it happened, but you don't forget this. I mean, it's such a part of who you are that for someone to actually sit down and write not one book, but 2 books on it, and then be involved in a documentary, it just shows how ingrained the impression that this left as a young child. You know, how difficult, how lucky are we that we don't live like that, you know?
Well, we grew up during the war, during the Holocaust, so we had no memory of peacetime. So that was our first memory. We thought that was the norm. So when the war ended, that was the strange time for us. And I remember asking my mother, I was 7 years old, what happened to the bombs? And she said, the war is over. There won't be any more bombs. And I remember making a mental note, oh, bombs only come during war. Wow. We didn't understand these things.
Yes.
You know?
So now, what about like the book of the Diary of Anne Frank when they hid in the attic? And you must really be able to relate to that.
Yes, I most certainly do. You know, and that was the fate of most of the children, unfortunately. And there is, of course, an Anne Frank Center in New York, and I'm invited to speak there quite often. So, and tell them that there are so many ways that children were hidden. You know, that was just one way. Mine was another. I mean, they hid in caves and cellars and forests and all kinds of ways, and also by taking on other identities. Yes. So, yeah.
So now, if somebody wanted to reach you, find out more about you, how would they contact you, Evi?
Well, if they go to the publisher, if they go on Amazon, Magda's Daughter, or go to the publishers, which is the Feminist Press at the City of New York University. They can contact the publisher, they will contact me, or they can go to my website, actually. EviBlaikie.com.
Could you spell it out for us, please?
It's EVI, and then it's BLAIKIE.com.
So I imagine when you come back, you'll have another book you could start writing about your adventures on this dock.
That sounds wonderful. But I do have a a novel hopefully getting published soon.
Oh, good, good. Good for you. Well, you'll have to share that with us, and you'll come back and visit and tell us all about your trip and how everything is going. Absolutely.
I will. Thank you. I certainly will. I'm a little bit apprehensive, I must admit, but hopefully it'll be good.
Yeah, I was thinking that's going to really jar some really deep-rooted memories, so you better bring your handkerchief.
I think so, yeah. Although I was having lunch with my 2 granddaughters, and the one who's not coming said, "How do you feel about going, Grandma?" And the one who is coming, she said, after I said I was a little apprehensive, she took my hand and she said, "Grandma, I'll be there for you."
Isn't that wonderful that you have that support system there? And I know you're such a happy and loving person and cheerful person, and that's really a testament to you and your strength to be able to have that beginning and not walk around with a chip on your shoulder and just really be a lovable person, because you're a lovable person. You are. So you're no worse for the wear, and that was a terrible time in history, and I'm glad that you're here with us now. Well, thank you again, Evi, and we'll have Evi back because she has a really exciting journey ahead of her and a wonderful story to tell. Thanks for joining us on Stage Screen and In Between.